But before we start talking about island expeditions, or the heart of Azeroth, or even war fronts, we should start by talking a little bit more about this substance Azerite.
All right. The battle for Azeroth is upon us, and let's get started. First, we're going to kick off with the basis of everything that is about this expansion, Azerite. Azerite is our new artifact power. It is essentially the blood of Azeroth that keeps popping up in seams. You're going to get it as rewards from world quests, emissaries, all the usual stuff you get artifact power from now. Plus all the new features that are coming with the expansion is going to be rewarding you with Azerite. And Azerite is going to empower the new artifact piece, which is the Heart of Azeroth. It's a necklace that's going to get gradually more powerful over the course of the expansion. It's basically the artifact weapon, kind of. It doesn't seemingly have any stats or anything yet. I imagine the neck piece itself is either going to be statless or have something very generic. So it might be something like an Arcano Crystal where it has some constant, overall passive stats for everything or something along those lines. But we didn't get to see that yet. What we do know is it's going to be coming, and that's going to be our artifact. The artifact weapons are going away. Blizzard told us that long time ago. That's no surprise there. It does open up the opportunity for the designers to make much more interesting weapons again. I can actually imagine the designers themselves were getting a little sick of reskinning Ashbringer over and over again to try and keep people interested instead of just making something weird and new that fit the theme of the content they were currently creating in terms of raids and PvP and all that stuff. So I'm quite happy it's a neck piece. I think that's fine. And the way this is going to work is there is going to be new armor in the game. So we're going to do all this content to collect Azerite over the course of the expansion, and there's going to be new armors in the game that kind of work like artifact weapons, but in a simpler way, and they're suggesting it opens up choice. It has way less RNG, as it does seem to have random abilities unlockable to it. So what we've seen is these concentric rings, and depending on how powerful your Heart of Azeroth is, the more choices you're going to be able to make within these rings. Now, I have to point out here, a lot of what they showed came with caveats like early in development, kind of what it's going to look like. Could be this, right? There was not really much finality. I've watched through all the virtual ticket stuff twice and some of them 3 times. And that was very clear. It was abundantly clear that they were like, it kind of will work like this, but it might not look like this. Don't shoot me if it's not exactly like this, but this is what we're going for. So all we got to see on these armor pieces were pictures that looked very much like talents and spells, right? So they showed a shaman, we saw things that looked like astral shift, we saw things that looked like storm strike, we saw things that looked like lava burst and fire elemental, things like that, but they never ever showed us a tooltip of what that was. Now he did kind of tell us what the choices could be. This suggests to me is they're not quite decided on how exactly or what exactly these bonuses are going to be. What we do know is the more powerful your Heart of Azeroth gets because you're collecting more Azerite, is you will have access to more of the rings, and that will happen passively. Okay, similar to your artifact weapon now with the Nether Crucible. This is basically a twist on the Nether Crucible system. Is the higher your artifact is, the higher the Heart of Azeroth is, when you get a new piece of armor. And these armors can't Titan Forge, by the way, which I think is really interesting. Titan Forge is remaining in the game, but these Azerite-infused pieces do not Titan Forge. They are based entirely on the Heart of Azeroth power, which should, generally speaking, be more powerful than a Titan Forge ever could be, because it's going to give you these huge bonuses. So that's what they're thinking there. You will be able to get more of them. You'll be able to pick up more of these choices, be able to select more things, and gain more bonuses for your character that way, in a similar vein to what you do when you get a new trait in your artifact weapon, is you pick up an extra bonus. Now, questions arise from this system, of course. So the examples he gave was, he had a choice there between Lightning Bolt and something else, and he's like, okay, well this one gives me like 20% more Lightning Bolt damage. Another one's like, I take less damage when I use Astral Shift than I ordinarily would do. And another one was improved speed to Ghost Wolf. And these are the kind of choices you're going to be making there in his example, which is not set in stone in any way. What do we think about this then? I think this is fine. It allows some customization, although I still wholeheartedly believe there will be clear and obvious choices of what to take. If I was to hazard a guess for most people in a similar scenario to what he presented, if I was looking at raiders, most of them, unless they absolutely have to take the Astral Shift one, will want movement speed every day of the week. Certainly if they're DPSing. They will absolutely want movement speed. But if I'm PvPing, maybe I want to take less damage from Astral Shift. So he was correct that this does provide some interesting choices for players to make. I think they will nail that, and it'll depend on what content you're playing, which will enable you to make that choice. But I still think that we will be sort of cookie-cuttering which one is better, the same way as the Nether Crucible works now. These ones are just flat out better for what I do in the game. Other ones are flat out better if I do other stuff in the game. But that is the nature of RPGs in general. I don't think they could have got away from that. What was curious about the Azerite infused pieces they showed is they were all in slots that are typically reserved for tier gear. They showed head, shoulders, chest. Does that mean tier gear is going away? Now we're in wild speculation mode now. Does that mean tier gear is going to go away? Wouldn't be too surprised if that was to happen, if I'm honest, given the difficulty Blizzard has run into, certainly in Legion, with making tier sets more interesting. They have said there are going to be no random legendaries in the Battle for Azeroth, so that maybe eases up on the complexity a little bit. Certainly if you saw my RNG video about a week or so ago, you'll understand that there are so many individual bonuses and tricks you can play with your character that a less educated player can really struggle to maximize what his player can do and suffers horrendously from that. It looks to me, based on what we've seen so far, is that they really want to simplify things down and give people a choice where they're going to have to at least mouse over the bonuses to understand what they're doing. So if it is something like my lightning bolt hits harder or I move faster in Ghost Wolf, the player will, one, be aware of that. Doing away with tier gear, keeping the cosmetic feel, I'm sure they'll do that, but getting away from tier bonuses. Do I like that idea? I do in the Legion world. I don't in the old world. In the old world, my set bonuses were very interesting for the most part, and I could do something with them. In the Legion world, my set bonuses, and certainly as we go into Antorus, my set bonuses are super boring for the most part, and really uninteresting for nearly every class. Not every single class, but nearly every class. So I wouldn't be too sad to see that go if that meant I could pick up other bonuses along the way, which then leveled up as my neck piece becomes more and more interesting. Other questions is, how is this scaling going to work? There are plenty of examples of potentially really efficient ways of farming Azerite, which we're going to get to in a different video. Are we going to be able to chain this hardcore, or are they going to just simply make it overwhelmingly hard to get the next levels? I imagine they are going to do that. That's what they've learnt with Artifact Power, is to make the levels absurdly large once you get to a certain point, and then they can allow some sort of catch-up system later on in the game. But the Azerite system is the foundation. It's the absolute foundation of everything. Other speculation, it clearly seems to me that... I can't go into too many spoilers about what happens at the end of Legion, but many people already know, is we know why Azeroth is leaking this blood, this Azerite, which is the lifeblood of Azeroth. But I could also very easily see at the end, or towards the latter end of the Battle for Azeroth, is players turning in all the blood they have collected, returning that to Azeroth, throwing it into Azeroth's heart or something like that, and having some sort of monumental, epic conclusion for the Battle for Azeroth, where I've collected all this blood, all this life force of Azeroth, and I'm returning it to the world in order to repair it or regrow it in some way. Which would make sense considering they are going to be destroying various parts of Azeroth, seemingly, in order to make the Battle for Azeroth expansion actually work, which again we're going to look at in another video. So the Azerite system, for me, I'm okay with it. It seems fine. I like the idea that it's going to be happening on top of everything else. I think Artifact Power itself is fine. I never really had an issue with Artifact Power until you got to the really high levels, and that's just because, God, it takes so long to get, but you still want it. You still want those bonuses. So for now, I'm pretty happy with it. So in the next couple of videos, we're going to look at all the content they've decided on. There's a lot of confusion in how this is going to work on actually acquiring Azerites. So, okay, I'm okay with the Azerite system.